Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about it. And in this video, I want to talk about the costs that were rendered in my appeal in the Divisional Court appealing a tribunal decision in the Landlord Tenant Board. I was straight up illegally evicted. I had over $10,000 of my property damaged. I had to pay $3,000 for legal fees. I had to pay a moving company $500 to move my stuff back in. The unit, the Waterloo Region Police got involved. They determined there was nothing criminal, nothing family. This was strictly civil. They allowed me to kick in the door without charging me. The owner received a $10,000 check from Travelers Insurance, which is straight up fraud over $5,000. The police, the courts never did nothing about it. And it's just been a handicap match from my illegal eviction from this lawyer, John David Ekpenyong, out of Toronto. So this video, I want to specifically talk about the cost, how this trial went, leading up to the trial. So that's what this video is going to be about. This video is going to be honest. It's going to be factual. I have nothing to gain to mislead anybody. I've got nothing to gain to bash anybody. This is my personal experience. This is the honest truth, what's been suppressed, and I'm just going to get into these costs. So the opposing party, John David Ekpenyong, I'm going to tell you guys right now, he never filed any of the deadlines for filing materials. Let me back it up a bit. So I lost the trial. I lost this appeal in Divisional Court, and my materials that I prepared, I can confidently say that I don't think there's one other person in the KW region, the Hamilton region, as a self-represent litigant who prepared their materials like I did. I was a friggin' rock star, and they weren't having it. I just think it's pretty obvious. These courts don't like self-represent litigants who come in there guns blazing, put a lawyer to shame, a lawyer who I want to question how he got his license, where he was at, where he went to school, and when he challenged it, because I'm almost confident, this lawyer cheated on his exam and to get his license. And until he can provide, or we can find out where he went to school, it was somewhere in Africa, and then where he took his license in Toronto. He got his license in 2016, and dealing with this lawyer for 3 years, it is evident, it is very suspicious how he conducts himself. And I think there should be a full audit on this lawyer. So, I went to the Landlord Tenant Board in June of 2022. This whole family court thing unraveled, and I'm like, screw it. I got illegally evicted. These people trashed my shit. 3 animals died in the process of this. So I filed the appeal with the Landlord Tenant Board. I filed a Landlord Tenant eviction application. That was, to be honest, it was an absolute joke what happened with that whole Landlord Tenant process. There was 3 hearings. John David Ekpenyong never filed materials for the first 2 hearings. There was adjournments. I never got cost for that. This trial lawyer, appeal lawyer, Justice John Krochenko, he put in his endorsement that there was 3 days of opportunity to say stuff, and it was like, that whole landlord-tenant experience just shows me how broken and corrupted the landlord-tenant is. And when Robert Pache told me to shut up and answer the questions, or he's gonna dismiss my application, that whole process was tainted. And this was on the first hearing, and of course his colleagues they covered him up. They didn't discipline him. They allowed it. There's code of conduct. This adjudicator, Robert Patchett, he was in clear violation. He should have been disciplined, but he never was. So the appeal, the landlord tenant is the eviction is dismissed. So I get the ball rolling with the appeal in the Divisional Court, and I've done a video about that whole process and just how much they railroaded me and gave this party, responding party, 1 year to file their materials. So John David Ekpenyong never followed deadlines for his materials. This lawyer literally took 1 year to file his materials. This lawyer, John David Ekpenyong, in these costs in that trial, straight up committed perjury. He submitted more fraudulent bills of cost that no one seems to be calling this lawyer out on, which is a very, very disturbing pattern. So this lawyer, John David Ekpenyong, he originally requested for $11,000 2 years ago. He admitted to paying, his client paid $11,000 2 years ago, which was bullshit. Let's just call a spade a spade. Your client never paid you $11,000, and one day it's going to come down to where this lawyer is eventually going to lose his license, and it's just this is where it's got to go to, because when you submit like $250,000 in court costs that your client never paid, and you get paid half of that, a third of that, it needs to be audited. There needs to be an assessment, and so far no one's making them do that. So the appeal in the Divisional Court, John David Ekpenyong admits his client paid $11,000. Never did. I lose the trial. I lose the appeal. He asked for $7,000. And because I had to block this lawyer, because you guys have seen in previous posts and videos that because of his psychotic and unhinged behavior, I had to block him. So I found out my spam. He sent me an offer for $7,000. So he admitted previously paying $11,000. Now he's asking me for $7,000. I asked him for an assessment of the bill. Now his costs go up to $23,000. Like, this is the crap that this lawyer is doing, that he's getting away with. And then he ends up telling the judge that I refused the offer, which I'm going to get into. I never did. This is the perjury, these fraudulent bills. This judge, Justice John Krachenko, he took 2 days to render a decision after appeal. I busted my ass off on my materials, and I'm going to do a video where I'm going to show you guys all of my materials that I had to prepare. As a self-represented litigant, the materials that they ask you to submit in such a short time frame, it's almost impossible. So the judge took 2 days to render a decision about this appeal and then he took hours. He took hours to render a decision for cost, which was straight up crap. A judge takes 2 days and then hours, so it's suspicious. Straight up. I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest I'm honest in my videos, and I'm not happy, how I've been dealt with. And there's an obvious pattern that there's, someone behind the scenes that seems to be orchestrating stuff, because this courthouse, the Superior Courthouse, will not let me in at all because of this family court matter that I had no business ever being in. So the judge told parties to submit cost to the trial coordinator's office. There's an email. John David Ekpenyong submitted his costs on case lines and every other case and my materials, but the trial coordinator's office. So really, he didn't even submit his materials, and he should be seen as late, and he never was. The other thing too is that a major event that happened that this appeal judge did not comment in any of his endorsements or at the court, is that Justice Braid had altered and deleted an endorsement back in 2024. I think it was like May or June. She deleted a 10-page endorsement. And you know what? If any one of us did that, we would be charged with forgery, because when you delete or alter a document behind people's back and then you swap them all out, that is forgery. So I'm going to tell you guys right now, the Canadian Judicial Council, they refused to accept a complaint about that. These judges refused to address it. And I'll tell you right now, the Minister of Justice, he's ignoring me about this. This needs to be addressed. That this judge, Justice Katrina Braid, one of the top judges up there, did this. This completely tainted my appeal. And the fact that I lost the appeal and I was ordered to pay cost is just bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, that tainted my case. And the fact that they're handling it the way they are is not right. So that's what I'm going to be getting into, is these things. And so I appealed the landlord-tenant decision. I was illegally evicted on March 29, 2022 by John David Ekpenyong. Between damages and losses was well over 10 grand. 3 animals died. I was a tenant, and I was being asked to move out. I was trying to do my best. The homeowner, made it so uncomfortable. And in fact, this was all orchestrated by John David Ekpenyong. And I have an email I'll share with you guys on how this lawyer commented to this client, "Oh, you made it so uncomfortable for him. I'm so happy for you, blah, 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 blah." Like, this lawyer needs to be audited, and he needs to have his license suspended or completely removed from what he has done. He has crossed the line. He is in major violations with the Law Society, who also refuses to do anything. So here we go. All right, let's get this going. So my appeal materials, they took my appeal materials. It took me about 300. I spent about 300 hours on this, and I'll share what my materials with you guys. But any lawyer out there, any appeal lawyer, they would have charged over $100,000 easily for what the materials I did. I filed my notice of appeal on July 4th, 2023. John David Ekpenyong files his factum and certificate of service October 23rd, 2023. The courts give a strict 60 days to respond. John David Ekpenyong took 120 days. Okay? Any self-represented litigant, these court staffs won't accept the materials. They accepted his. On February 26, 2024, before Justice J. Standrick, she gave a list of outstanding documents and told parties to file their materials no later than March 1st, 2024. I filed my outstanding materials. John David Ekpenyong never filed any materials. In fact, he took a year later to file his materials. And this judge on his endorsement said there was nothing prejudiced about that because I got it like a week or two before the actual appeal, which I completely disagree. I filed a motion. We're at now November 30th, 2024. I had filed a motion previous. We get in front of Justice Gibson, the judge who is the trial judge who ordered me to pay $60,000. He steamrolled me with that order. So this judge gave a very strict deadlines for John David Ekpenyong to file his materials no later than New Year's Eve, 4 p.m. This lawyer ignorantly files his materials on New Year's Eve at 8 o'clock. And he's got a pattern of doing this. He always serves me on the weekends, emails, weekends, 12 at night, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. I'm going to be doing a whole video on the correspondence with this lawyer and how, he's got tendencies. Honestly, I feel like he's being racist towards me. I feel like I'm being discriminated against. 3 years of dealing with this lawyer, and I've got a slew full of examples. Normal lawyers wouldn't do that. I've got witnesses. That's witnesses' behavior. So his filings were late, and the courts accepted it. If you look under the rules of civil procedure, Rule 16.0310, service, you need to serve the person before 4 o'clock and file it with the courts. He never did that. The courts accepted it on January the 6th. Which was straight up crap. This is what I'm up against. You've got back in February, you've got a week to file your materials. The courts gave him a year, and they shouldn't even allowed it. We actually filed a motion. I filed a motion about a month before the appeal, and John David Ekpenyong, his client, didn't even show up. And I'll get into that endorsement. That was with Justice Reed, and how he said I didn't file any of my materials, which I did. I'll show you guys. I'll do a different video, another video about that. But so a major event in this whole thing is when Justice Katrina Braid, we went before her, May 24th, 2024. She wrote a 10-page endorsement. She scolded John David Ekpenyong. And then she went behind our backs and deleted that endorsement. There was information in that endorsement where she allowed my police reports. And at the trial, they denied it. John David Ekpenyong lied so many times that he got away with. And he said at this appeal, the judge said she wasn't going to accept the police reports. But if you look back at Justice Standrick's endorsement, she allowed it. And I filed it within the time. So straight up, I got screwed over in the Divisional Court, in the appeal. What they allowed, it needs to be audited. And I'm doing this video to share my honest experience. So, clearly I'm unhappy about this, and, if anyone in the public is caught deleting or altering a document, we would get charged with forgery, because that is forgery. So why does a judge think it's okay to do that? And if so, are they allowed to do that? I've asked Justice Krachenko about this. He never commented about it. So that makes me think that this is not right. This judge committed forgery on my document. The Canadian Judicial Council refuses to do anything about this. So this was brought up to Justice Krachenko at the appeal, and in my endorsement, in my costs, he never said one word about it. Because to me, that tells me she's done something wrong, and they don't want to put light on it. So this is a major issue that happened in this appeal, and it tainted my appeal. Justice Krachenko heard the appeal on March 5th, 2025. He dismissed it. He said John David Ekpenyong's materials were not prejudiced after filing them 1 year late. That was prejudice, straight up. How many chances are you going to give a lawyer to file his materials? He didn't file any deadlines. He sent it to me on New Year's Eve, and this is what the court's response is. And he's saying that it wasn't prejudice because the Landlord Tenant Board heard the matter over 3 days. Well, there was 2 adjournments because John David Ekpenyong didn't file any materials. He assumed it was going to get dismissed. This lawyer needs to be audited, and it's a no-brainer, So now we're going to kind of get into the cost here. So the cost. The judge delivered his order of cost within hours of my submission, which is very questionable. I'm sorry, you've already had your mind made up. When you give your decision 2 business days later, and then you give it within hours, when it was a no-brainer, I was illegally evicted by the hands of an unhinged lawyer who was the one who evicted me. I had over $10,000 of my property damaged. I had to spend $3,000 on a paralegal. My materials were all filed with the court. Again, that is not easy for any self-represented litigant out there. And I would love to hear from anyone out there who was a self-represented litigant in the Divisional Court. And I would like to know your opinion and share your experience, because for anyone that has dealt with the Divisional Court, it's not easy. I've already spoken about it. This lawyer just never even filed his materials, and they win it. So it's very suspicious. On Justice Krachenko said on his endorsement, John David Ekpenyong submitted his cost. Okay, sorry. So on his endorsement, this judge's endorsement, He told John, if we can't agree on cost, John David Ekpenyong to submit his cost by April 4th, 2025. To submit the cost by, I think it was, I'm getting the dates mixed up, sorry guys, but the judge told me to submit my cost. Sorry, he told John David Ekpenyong to submit his cost by March 28, 2025, and the judge told me to submit my cost by April 4th, 2025. I submitted my cost on March 31st. Within hours later, he sends his endorsement. I don't know, don't agree with that. I followed the instructions and I submitted my cost to the trial coordinator's office. This lawyer, John David Ekpenyong, never did. He submitted them to case lines, the family law, this fictitious litigant, his application they're trying to do to me. He submitted under my filings. Like this lawyer doesn't know what he's doing. He can't follow simple instructions. And yet, so he told us to do that. So the judge said on his endorsement that John David Ekpenyong's materials was forwarded to the judge. He didn't follow materials. He didn't submit it properly. This is what I'm talking about with this handicap match with the Kitchener Courthouse, the Superior Court. If I submitted my materials everywhere else but this trial coordinator's email, they wouldn't send it to him. This has been nothing but a handicap match with this courthouse, the administrators, and everyone involved. Like, this lawyer doesn't know how to be a lawyer at times, most of the times. The judges are doing his job for them. The court staff is doing the job for them. Okay? They're accepting materials late. This is not right. This lawyer sent multiple psychotic gaslighting emails. You want to talk about perjury? Submitting a fraudulent document? This lawyer tells the courts, I refuse to accept his offer of $7,000, and then he demands $23,000. This is another fraudulent bill and committing perjury that this lawyer needs to be called out on, and they just won't do it. John David Ekpenyong was all over the place with his materials, his whole appeal, and so I was ordered to pay $7,000 from Justice Krochenko, and I don't agree with it. This lawyer never filed his materials. He was the one who evicted me. I had all these damages. I have been in front of so many judges, and I've dealt with these tribunals. I have so much insight how these courts truly are. When you go on these websites and you start preparing for materials, the literature is great. You get out, there's rules. Half the time the rules weren't even followed. They allowed this lawyer to not follow the rules. You're given 1 week to file. You're given 60 days to respond to my appeal. They gave him 120. Justice Standrick gave this lawyer 1 week to file his outstanding materials. That I'll tell you right now, he never even filed. He was given 1 year to file some other materials. He never abided by Justice Standrick's endorsement. He never abided by Justice Gibson's endorsement. The court staff accepted his materials late. He straight up got caught lying with Justice Krochenko. I submitted the emails. He did nothing about it. They steamrolled me. The other day, it's April the 14th? My bank accounts have been frozen since September 6, 2024. This lawyer is trying to freeze my other bank accounts, which I get a text message from. This lawyer, he gaslights, he manipulates, he commits perjury, he submits fraudulent bills of cost, he tells me to shut up in court, he lies to judges, and he gets away with it. What kind of message is the courts sending to the public allowing these lawyers to conduct themselves like that on my dime? So it's really disturbing how these cases are being managed. You look at mine for a perfect example, is a perfect example. So, again, this all comes down to the whole family court thing, that restraining order, the comments on that endorsement, which, my evidence shows complete opposite. And this Kitchener courthouse, they can't let me in. They cannot let me in because I'll start opening up all this other stuff. I feel like my constitutional rights have been seriously violated with this court and how they've handled me and what they've allowed. And, I think eventually one day all the smoke is going to clear. And we're going to see what I've been talking about since day one has been the truth. And there's too much questionable mishandlings in these courts. I've seen it firsthand. Dozens and dozens of judges, dozens and dozens of dealing with the court staff. So that's what happened with my appeal. I just want to get that off my chest. I think it was completely mishandled. It's pretty evident, it's a really disturbing pattern, how they dealt with me. And that's just my opinion. I want to bring some light to this situation. And again, I want to figure out what happened with this endorsement that got deleted behind our backs, because I relied on information on that endorsement that I couldn't at this appeal, because somebody decided to go behind our backs sneakily and delete an endorsement. These courts allowed this lawyer all these extensions. The guy couldn't even figure out filing his materials. And then when he did it late, the court still accepted it. And it was just a disaster. This whole divisional court experience was an absolute disaster. Investing over 300 hours of my time into this just to have it dismissed in a snap of a finger. No, there's some problems here. And they need to be addressed. We need to talk about it. So that's my video on my costs for the appeal. Thank you guys for stopping by my channel. Let's talk about it. Please, I encourage anyone who's dealt with the divisional court, the appeals, the cost, in this Kitchener courthouse, any superior courthouse, please comment. Please, let's start a conversation. Hopefully this is just an isolated incident with me, and this isn't a pattern, an ongoing pattern that's happening. So again, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate everyone that's listening, and thank you guys so much.